Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the top stories from around the world right now. In a telephone call to the Switzerland ambassador in Tehran, which represents the interests of the United States in Iran since 1980, the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister for Political Affairs, Sayed Abbas Araki, expressed this Thursday the harsh protest of the Islamic Republic for the violation by the U.S. of the Iranian territory with a military drone. Iran has released footage of the missile, which it says shot down by U.S. military drone overnight. Video released by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps shows the moment an intruding U.S. spy drone was shot down at 4:05 a.m. local time. Reacting to the news, the United States military claimed it did not fly over Iranian airspace on Wednesday, but Iran says that the drone was set out to gather intelligence. Iran's foreign minister made his position public via Twitter. Javad Zarif said that Iran does not seek war but to defend its territories and that Iran will be taking the newest aggression to United Nations. Then, in another tweet, Zarif said that just after midnight, a U.S. drone took off from the United Arab Emirates in stealth mode, violating Iranian airspace. Iran says it has retrieved sections of the military drone in its own territorial waters where it was shot down. And commander of Iran's Islamic Republic Guard Corps, Major General Hossein Salami, said that the shooting down of a U.S. drone by his forces had a straightforward message that any foreign intrusion into Iran's sovereign territory would draw a crushing response. Addressing a conference in the province of Kurdistan, Major General Salami described the presence of the aircraft as a violation of the country's airspace. And now we move on to another topic. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Korea for a historic two-day visit. President Xi was welcomed in the capital Pyongyang by the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un, with senior officials from both countries also in attendance. The visit is the first by a Chinese president in 14 years and comes at a time when tensions in the Korean peninsula are rising. North Korea and the United States have been engaged in denuclearization talks, but results failed to materialize. China is seeking to break through and said it supports North Korea moving in the correct direction to resolve its problems politically. And we keep talking about China because they are set to resume talks with the United States, but with the right conditions in place to negotiate. The two economic giants have been engaged in the trade war since the Donald Trump administration began imposing tariffs on Chinese exports in 2018.
President Xi expressed that he is willing to have a meeting with President Trump in Osaka during the G20 summit and to exchange opinions over fundamental problems in the development of China-US relations. The trade teams from both sides will seriously implement the important instructions from both leaders to prepare for the meeting between the two during the Osaka G20 summit. China hopes the US will listen to its industry voices, abandon wrong behaviors, and solve problems through equal dialogue and cooperation. This is in line with the interests of the people of both countries and the world.
And at least 2 people have died and 21 are injured after a night of protest against the government of Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández. According to a report released by the University Hospital in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, one of the deceased has been identified as 29-year-old Luis Antonio Maldonado. Anti-government protests have grown since the police went on a strike in the Central American country, demanding the resignation of President Hernández. The health and education sectors in Honduras have been holding demonstrations since the month of May. And the Honduran National Police have themselves refused to participate in crackdowns against protesters, as officers say the rights such as the voluntary retirement have been violated by the government, and they are demanding a salary increase. To know more of this development information, we have the following report sent earlier by our correspondent in Tegucigalpa, Hilda Silvestrucci. Welcome, Hilda.
We're outside the Police Special Forces building where early Thursday police declared a national strike and informed the Honduran people that they would not accept another day of repression of their protests until their superiors resolve their demands, including an end to labor exploitation and a revision of their salaries as offered last year. Police also say they're not the ones repressing the protests, and another force in the service of President Juan Orlando Hernandez is to blame. Here, they've forced their superiors out of the building at gunpoint, making it clear that they're not going anywhere until the government listens to their demands.
Thank you, Hilda. And we keep talking about Honduras because Honduran authorities temporarily withheld Telesur journalists earlier today as they entered the country to cover recent events. Juan Carlos Martinez and Eduardo Martinez, whom traveled from Mexico, were stopped upon arrival at the Tegucigalpa airport, with authorities saying they require an invitation to cover the news there, something which isn't stipulated in any law. They have also been released and returned their passports and granted entry. They will now join permanent Honduran correspondent Hilda Silvestrucci to report from the ground for our screens. And like this, we go to a first break. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account, of course, at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us. And we are back with more news in Sudan. The mastermind of a crackdown which claims several protesters' lives have been identified according to Sudanese Military Council. The deputy chief of Sudan's Military Council says that they have identified a ringleader who instituted the killing of protesters on the 3rd of June. However, the culprit has not been named yet. Protesters were violently dispersed by men in military uniforms shooting and beating demonstrators who had participated in a week-long sitting outside the army headquarters. We keep talking about Sudan because the head of the ruling military council have called on protest leaders to resume talks on the transfer of power without any conditions. Tensions between the two sides persist after the deadly dispersal of a sitting protest. Dozens of protesters were killed and hundreds wounded on June 3rd, when a weeks-long protest camp was raided by gunmen in military fatigues. The raid came after the collapse of earlier negotiations between the ruling generals and protest leaders, in which they were unable to agree on who should lead a new governing body. And we keep talking about news in Africa. Meanwhile, African Union ministers have met in Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to discuss the situation in Sudan. The meeting is in follow-up after the Africa bloc suspended Sudan early this month, threatening punitive sanctions if the military leadership doesn't quickly relinquish power. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is leading mediation between the protesters and the ruling military council. He visited Sudan 2 weeks ago after a crackdown where over 100 people were killed. On June 20th marks International Refugee Day, and a report by the United Nations and Norwegian Refugee Council has revealed that more than 70 million people in 2018 were living as refugees due to wars and conflict. The figures, which are the highest since the end of the Second World War, were released on Wednesday on the eve of World Refugee Day. The report, dubbed Global Trends, also dispelled the notion that developed nations are shouldering the burden of the refugee crisis. According to the report, about 84% of the refugees are being hosted by developing countries.
So Ethiopia has, with 1.5 million more displaced, added to this horrific number of more than 70 million refugees and internally displaced in the world now because of war and conflict and the violence. That's the highest number since the Second World War. So it's a tremendous wake-up call, I think, for governments, for diplomats, but for all of us. The way it is going now, it is not going well. The north is failing. 16% of refugees are now hosted by the rich world. It's the poorest of countries, it's those who are developing who are now shouldering the major burden. In Ethiopia, even assistance is not there. We have, as humanitarian organizations on the ground, a quarter of what we need for basic humanitarian relief this year, 2019.
And Mauritania's leading presidential candidates are hoping to convince voters that they are the right successor to President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz, who is standing down after a decade in power. The election should mark the country's first democratic transition of power through the ballot box. Presidential polls will be held in Mauritania on June 22nd, with a second round planned for July 6, if no candidate receives more than 50% of the vote.
I will help disadvantaged populations, especially workers and peasants, by lowering the prices of essential materials, increasing wages and adopting a number of measures that all benefit our populations.
We know perfectly well, and we have received messages that prove that a large part of these people under pressure will vote for Mohamed Ould Maouloud, despite their physical presence.
And like this, we go to a second and very short break here from the south. You can find this and much more other information on our website as you're seeing it, telestorenglish.net. And we are back with the news. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet continues her visit to Venezuela and is expected to hold talks with Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro this Thursday evening during her official visit to the country. The day's agenda included meetings with the Defense Minister, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the country's top prosecutor, Tarek William Saab, as well as with other high-level ministers like Planning Minister Ricardo Menéndez, who made statements following their meeting.
We have taken the opportunity to recognise and thank the High Commissioner for Human Rights for the visit that has been made to our country on the invitation of the President of the Republic, in order to present the constructive vision we have for the country, in order to see the wounds of war, to optimise our response precisely to those wounds, and at the same time understand the causes of those wounds and strike at that which is holding back peace, which is the overriding interest of all Venezuelans.
When receiving her this Wednesday, the Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza stressed the importance of Bachelet's two-day visit, saying that the devastating effect of the economic blockade on Venezuela must be made public. Let's hear the exact words.
Of course, we examine the challenges that our country has in the area of human rights, and as President Nicolás Maduro has said, we want the office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to recommend in a constructive way, to guide us, and go hand in hand with them to improve every day, to correct what needs to be corrected, in order to preserve the human rights of Venezuelans. There will be meetings with the public authorities. Meetings will also be held with private organizations in the country that will express their concerns in order to improve the system of protection of human rights in Venezuela.
And now we keep moving on to the Caribbean now. A fact-finding mission from the Organization of American States has met with Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse to discuss the ongoing political crisis and matters of security. Coming out of those talks, Moïse said that he remains convinced that the dialogue is the only tool that will allow political differences to be resolved in the country. The delegation has proposed putting together an OAS-sanctioned commission made up of international financial experts to help Haiti's government auditors probe corruption towards prosecution. Haiti had requested the OAS visit in the hope of the organization helping facilitate dialogue between the president and protesters demanding his resignation. Moïse is facing escalating challenges to his leadership after government auditors found more evidence of large-scale corruption, which triggered street protests and strikes in several Haitian cities. And Trinidad and Tobago is Cuba's biggest trading partner in the CARICOM region and 5th overall in Latin America. Now both countries are exploring new trades and export opportunities. Over 20 companies from Trinidad and Tobago participated in the recently held Expo Caribe in Cuba. The delegation led by the Trade Minister also included representatives from Tobago's House of Assembly and various sectors, including energy. Participants are fully exploiting opportunities in the Cuban market by forming new business relationships as well as exploring joint venture partnerships. The delegation sought to increase the visibility of Trinidad and Tobago and its products in the Cuban market. And Guyana and Cuba have also agreed to enhance relations during a recent official visit by Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. His Guyanese counterpart highlighted the medical support provided by Cuba, including treatment given to President David Granger recently. Both foreign ministers expressed confidence in the relationship between the two countries.
Guyana envisions much to be accomplished through our partnership as we work towards the consolidation of ongoing initiatives while exploring new and innovative ones.
Our commitment to fulfill the cooperation agreements in different areas, maybe most importantly in the healthcare sector.
And Guyana's opposition leader Bharat Jagjo is adamant that general elections can be held within 3 months, despite claims by the Guyana Election Commission that the earliest possible date would be sometime in November. The Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that last December's no-confidence motion was valid and that the president appointed of the Election Commission's chairman was flawed and unconstitutional. The opposition leader says that while he is pleased with the ruling by the Caribbean Court of Justice, he wants fresh elections soon. And now we move on to Barbados, where Prime Minister Mia Mottley has accused world leaders of turning a blind eye to countries that have been unfairly burdened by the devastating effects of climate change, as she also urged countries to embrace climate refugees during the International Labour Organization conference in Geneva, Switzerland.
He's very concerned about this latest development, about the shooting down of the drone. He has warned against any escalation, stressed that the world cannot afford a major conflict in that area. I think it's important that all parties exercise maximum restraint and avoid any action that could inflame the situation.
And like this, we come to the end of this brief. Remember, always continue with Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until next time, thank you for watching.